Welcome to Merton.TV, the Financial Monitoring Task Group. I'm sorry for starting a bit late. We had a very interesting review of Treasury Management presented by...
You don't think those words very
I'm used to that.
Presented by Morden. It was very interesting too. So we now come to our Financial Monitoring Task Group. Welcome everybody. Do we have apologies for absence from anyone? I think okay. I shall endeavour to finish the meeting at 9 o'clock if I can, maybe earlier if possible. Because we have run on a bit in the past. Let's move on to point number 2, declaration of pecuniary interest. Do we have any of those? No, thank you. Let us, point 3, minutes of the last meeting. First of all, let us check for accuracy and completeness. Are there any issues of accuracy and completeness that people would like to raise? No?
There's an M, if you want a tiny point on number 5, page 3, there's an M missing. I'm sure we saved more than 1 point.
That's so lived down.
£1.50 of income. Someone else did it
That's
last
like
time.
peak lived
I like
down.
it in
Oh
this
yes,
time.
I see.
They don't do that.
Yeah. £1.50, yeah.
Well, that's why they build it in.
Yeah. So can I take it that the minutes are approved? Thank you. So moving on to matters arising. On page 1, the minutes I guess will be public. Yes, excellent. On page 2 or 3, I don't think there's anything arising there. On page 4, Caroline, you were going to...
I think that's failed.
Yes, I've had a look later on in the pack on page 81 and 85, but I'm not sure you kind of answered the exam question, but we'll come to that later on the agenda.
So apologies for that.
Okay. Under the capital programme, there was this interesting point about whether the Bishopsford Road bridge collapse was covered by insurance. Does anyone know anything about that?
We are still awaiting the outcome from the structural engineers.
Okay. Then there's a point about the middle page 4, the unbudgeted surplus in the housing benefit budget.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. I also failed on that one.
Okay, right.
We will look to circulate
Later.
those,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I failed on the HR one as well.
Okay.
So we will endeavour to follow up on
Okay. So then the only other things to note is that we had agreed to take the miscellaneous debt update and the HR report earlier in the meeting. So on that basis, I would propose slightly amending the order of the agenda. Is that agreeable?
It is with me, Chair.
that. You don't need to take the HR items because there's no one HR here, so that can be delayed to then let John go because he's here for the strategic grant programme report.
Okay. Strategic grant program report.
That's this one.
Oh, the next item.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's do the strategic grant program report, then we'll do David's update on the miscellaneous debt, etc.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So, yes, item number 4, the allocation of grants to the voluntary sector, and we're asked to note the way in which the allocation is done and comment on the development and expanded programme, but let's lead off with the presentation.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm John Dillon, Head of Policy Strategy and Partnerships, and was the lead officer working to hammer duty on this strategic grants programme. I won't say too much, just to flag the kind of key differences about the programme. We we adopted a much more commissioned basis approach for the grant programme this year, so being much stronger about the outcomes that we wanted as a council. We worked closely with the voluntary sector on what it was that we wanted. There had been a criticism in the past that we hadn't engaged them enough early enough in the process, and they could have offered us advice on the best way to achieve the goals that we wanted. So there was a strong feature of the voluntary sector being involved in the development of our prospectus. In the past, we've had 5 separate kind of grants programmes, different forms, different times of the year. There's been quite a strong pushback on that to say, well, look, why don't you all get yourself organised as a council and as officers and have one programme, have one form, and ask us all of the information that you want, but ask us just the once. So we've gone from 5 separate timetables to just one. One form, one process, one scoring system, and so on. We were optimistic that this would be a kind of springboard for engaging with the voluntary sector better. I think they're a major asset for us and can really help around particularly things like preventive services. And I think it has led to a much better working relationship. In some instances, there have been some changes in the voluntary sector itself, so some people have left organisations, I think for various reasons, on the back of the programme. And I'd say that we were very careful to manage the process, so it was very transparent, very clear kind of how we did it. We gave a clear right to review for people to challenge, on the basis that we wanted people to know, but also to be able to improve, so that if they wanted to bid next time, they knew where they'd gone wrong. And that's all I wanted to say at this stage. Any questions?
Any questions or comments, colleagues? Peter?
It's a question about what's not in here, John.
Okay.
And that is the smaller organisations that, this governance dysfunction, but that's unfair, that haven't got funding. So we are consolidating funding to larger organisations that we, in many respects, are better equipped to put their case. So
Yes.
do we feel we've lost small organisations along the way that relied on us in the past for their grant funding and will not be funded in the future?
So my feeling is that we've not lost any small organisations, but that the bigger organisations have tended to win through, and that they have been, in terms of demonstrating value for money and things like that, they have been stronger. So people, organisations like Citizens Advice, the Guild, Age UK, they presented very strong proposals, and with the weighting, they scored well. I don't think we've lost anybody, and certainly some of the small organisations are in there. So the Polish Families Association, small local group, Theory Voice, Deaf Plus, yeah. So there are quite a few. So yeah, and definitely Commonwealth, definitely Common Side, and Polish Families put forward very strong proposals. With the benefit of hindsight, would we do it differently? I think we would. We held a wrap-up review with voluntary sector organisations. We had quite a big turnout for it. And they said that we hadn't allowed them long enough to put together consortia proposals. We did get a couple of consortia proposals, but they were poor, to be frank. We hadn't allowed long enough. We had actually allowed much longer than we have ever done in terms of the time to prepare a bid, but definitely not long enough. I think that we could offer probably more support via MBSC to the smaller organisations, And I think the one thing that we looked very closely at is we gave people the option of a consortium proposal or applying separately. The large organisations did, they all applied separately. And I think we might, going forward, look at whether we actually say, well, no, one of the features that we're asked for is large organisations working with smaller organisations as part of your proposal and force the issue. Because there are obviously benefits of working with the larger organisations just in terms of economies of scale, they're very efficient, but it's the smaller organisations often going to deliver real value locally, and they could, the larger organisations could help them more, I think, in terms of some of their systems, and yeah, I think that we might force the issue next time. That's my view, and that was certainly the feedback to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Natasha.
Thank you for your report. Just to further on from that, but I've got several questions from reading through the papers. Is there much help given to the smaller organisations on how to fill out forms and go through the processes, of like a kind of pre-application workshop or anything to help them get the best chance of being successful? And my second question was, I know that you canvassed everybody to see what was the main 5 elements that came out of it and what you should be focusing the bids on. There doesn't seem to be anything really for young people in the bids. There was nothing that came out for our younger residents. It seemed to be advice and stuff like that. So I was just wondering, is there any way of helping organisations that look after young people a bit more and encouraging them to bid for?
So we held a lot of workshops, both at the start, in the middle, just before it went live, to give people as much time to talk to us. We held a, I can't remember what we called it, but it was a drop-in session, where if people wanted to bid, they could just come in and see us, and we were in the Civic Centre, or MBSC possibly, MBSC at Vestry Hall for the day. We didn't get a big turnout of people, I'm afraid, but so we did offer that. I think again with hindsight, we could have commissioned MBSC to deliver a bit more support. They wrote some of the consortia bids. Again, within these four walls, we're being recorded, aren't we?
Within these 4 walls of the 5th wall.
Yes. I suppose we felt that one of the reasons for being a bit, for being stronger on what our requirements were to make sure that if there was any kind of underperformance, we had a very clear yardstick to hold people to. And I think we were concerned about some of the support offer, I suppose, to the smaller groups, and we wanted to see an improvement in that. And I think that reflected, unfortunately, to me, in some of the quality of the consortia bids. But yes, I think that's definitely something that we will look to do next time, is to actually provide that advice to the smaller groups, because they definitely do have a lot to offer, but sometimes just don't get that across well, even though we designed the form in a very simple way and offered a lot of guidance on how to complete the form. Can young people, I would say that the advice offering, I would hope that would be open to younger people as well if they needed advice. It's certainly one of the areas that we looked at. I think that, again, with hindsight, we didn't get a strong involvement from children's services, and we work very closely with adult social care, I suppose, and that's something that maybe next time we would look to do. We did speak to the Children's Commissioner. I think they were struggling at the time in terms of with investing in these types of more preventative services, I suppose, and that they had cut back on youth services and things like that. Although we had in the investment, we gave some additional money to MBSC, or into that pot of funding, there's an extra 50,000. And we made it clear to MBSC that one of the gaps which came up in the commission process was advice to organisations that supported young people, and that we wanted them to do a specific piece of work, their development advisor, Bo, to actually work more closely with those organisations and give them more support, and that would be a priority for them. And that's included in the grant agreement with them. So we did get that in, but yeah, I think that that's another area where we could have done better.
Thank you for the report. I see the way the outcomes were derived. Have we, and maybe the answer is an obvious one, have we given thought to how we're now communicating the outcomes we want to the community so that people know what they should expect from these various bodies?
I'd have to have a think about that, I think, because obviously we did engage service users in the process of specifying, and you know, that proved to be quite illuminating, actually. You know, it isn't rocket science, but you know, is actually triangulating with service users proved to just set out a slightly different picture than the one that we were being presented with from the voluntary sector itself. I don't think, other than the publicity that we've done in terms of kind of press releases, I don't think we've gone back. I'm not sure quite how we would go back either. I think one of the areas that we were looking for an improvement on is around pathways for people, that if one organisation couldn't help them, they would get what's called, this is an awful expression, but a warm handover. So not just, oh, here's a piece of paper and get in touch with that organisation down the road, that they would actually get an introduction to that organisation. I think that's what we were hoping for with the consortium is that you would get people coming together and providing a system-wide approach, so that if you're a family, for example, you might get help with kind of debt advice, or you might need help on a kind of health issue or something like that. That actually you got a package of support as a family, rather than having to go to the individual organisations to knit that together yourself. And that's one of the feelings that we felt people had to make their own way through the system. And we're lucky to have, you know, over 700, 800 voluntary sector organisations in the borough, but it is difficult to find your way around them. What I would say, and a thought has occurred to me, but there is a proposal to develop a hub of hubs, which is, you know, different organisations have different hubs. We have a hub the way you go for advice. MBSC have a hub, CCG has a hub. There is a plan to bring all of those hubs together with one hub above, that you could go to the one hub and be directed into the sub-hubs. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Spokes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That's a good, yeah, the hub and spoke. And that, I suppose, it wouldn't communicate it out to people, but it would mean that you could go to one place and find out information, but go into the various organisations direct.
So I suppose we could put something future thing of my
We could do like that.
and just to sort of flag what these are, and then that there's a hub of hubs with spokes coming, just to put it out there as to what people can expect.
Because one of our issues as a local authority is people not knowing what to expect and not knowing what they're meant to get from the system.
Yeah.
And I don't think we communicate enough what we're trying to achieve, and then for them to then map against it whether they're getting it. So they complain about things they shouldn't get, and don't complain about things they should get.
Because actually there's a massive package here, you know, in terms of, there's a 4 million package of advice support. It is bigger than lots of other boroughs, so yes, you know.
So I really enjoyed reading this, and I've got little substantive to say beyond plaudits, right? It's because I went to CCIN, the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network, right? We're not a member of it, but I went up to one of those things, and there's lots of people talking about this kind of stuff all over the place. But they are using fig leaves to hide what they're already doing or rebranding. And then I read this document, and we're clearly doing good stuff in this space, right? We're really doing it. But as was highlighted by our peer challenge or whatever, we kind of hide the light and we don't broadcast it enough. And I think this is almost like the perfect example of it. I'm a member of the co-op party. I love cooperation and community engagement. And this is really sort of good in what we're doing here. But unless we really sort of broadcast that, people are not going to know about it, either as a user, which is of critical importance, those vulnerable people getting access to it, or actually in the way that they, at a time when our streets are dirty, judge us for our sort of only the bad things we're doing, not the good things we're doing. You know, this is really good stuff, a lot of this, and we just seem to not broadcast it anywhere.
So just on that, if you're doing a hub of hubs, the best way to do that is a website.
Oh, no, yes.
But one that
Yeah.
we can actively point to from other places, and constantly talk about, because there is so much stuff here. There's so many amazing things that people are probably doing that we aren't even, or half aware of.
And it's part of that access point and transparency stuff.
The hub will definitely help, and I think we've definitely given a lot of thought to how we tell the voluntary sector what we're doing. But again, we've probably lost the communication out to residents.
Yeah.
And also, we're not sharing best practice with other councils. We're not participating in sector-led improvement, which, loads of councils are going around and saying, "Oh, look at me, I found 2 pence or whatever."
No, it is
I'm
interesting.
getting applauded for it. And, there's really good work in this space, and you're just thinking, actually, there's 342 other councils in England who probably could learn from some of the good things we're doing as well. And it's just about sharing that practice.
Any other questions? I have a question myself. I understand that the total funding has remained constant at about 4 million. As a result of changes in what has been happening outside in the world, has the actual allocation to individual bodies changed? Is there a trend in reallocating the 4 million differently to how it has been allocated in the past?
That is a very good question, actually. I think the proportions are broadly similar, but we have increased our investment in infrastructure support. So at MBSC, I think we felt that actually they were critical to what we wanted from the voluntary sector, and yet we are at the lower end of the spectrum. So we've allocated additional money to them. I don't think the splits have changed that much between the different types of things. No, so I think I'd need to go back and check.
So, but what we do have on our website is our voluntary sector funding database, which will show each organisation that has been funded going back a number of years. So if you wanted to see in the actual detail of who's been awarded funding, you can see and check that year on year. But the splits that we've done, organisations in between may have lost or
Yes,
gained,
absolutely.
but the splits are happened.
Thank you. Nigel.
Okay, thank you. Which, have you, come across if, one, group is, underfunded, and now group is, overfunded, are you able to, step in and control make sure there's one groups, involved.
So you're saying if a group is funded, but then we think that they're overfunded?
Yeah,
would we say-
or underfunded.
I don't think there's no facility to do that. So the allocations, once they're made, we would stick to those allocations. We do look in making the allocations and deciding how much to give different groups. We did look quite closely at other funding sources that they had, and to try and maximise the benefits, I suppose, and give and give as wide a number of organisations funding as we could. So we were quite careful in asking people about, well, we asked for their accounts and we asked for all their sources of funding. So if we were aware that someone was being funded for something already and they were asking for more funding for that particular thing which didn't happen to us, we didn't fund that element of their bid, but we wouldn't do anything retrospectively.
Would you do any review to see how they're doing, and also looking in the short-term plan and long-term plan?
Yeah. So that is something that we do. So it's a requirement that we carry out six monthly monitoring, and all of the organisations kind of submit returns against the specification that we agreed with them, and if we felt that this was one of the benefits of having a much more carefully set out set of requirements, that it would give us a stronger lever if we felt that someone wasn't delivering on something, actually that we could argue, well, would we ask them, would we take away the funding retrospectively? Probably not, but would we adjust the funding if we felt that someone wasn't delivering something? Yes, potentially we could. So yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you very much, John. That was interesting too. And I think the feeling of the meeting is that we like the way in which the grants are assessed, grant applications are assessed, and we understand the allocation of the money to the various 5 strategic programmes. So yes, I think it's been a very useful session and much appreciated.
Yeah, well,
Thank you very
likewise for
much.
me, so thank you very much. I found it really helpful. Yeah, and those points I will take away. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So, David, this is your big chance for an early flower.
And it's raining outside.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or bad. Okay. I'll just go through a couple of points on the debt report and then take any questions.
Yeah.
So the actual debt report starts on page 120.
So, can you use the microphone, David?
Sorry.
Yeah.
The debt report actually starts on page 122 of the pack. So this is the debt report as at the end of September. As I say, I'll just go through a few highlights, if you like. The first table shows the sundry debt owed to the council over 30 days by each department. From June to September, there was an increase of just over £1 million. I'm just doing the end of December one, and that's reduced by 920,000. So you'll get that in the next report that comes to you. I sort of highlighted under 1.4 some of the larger debts that were outstanding at the time. We wrote 674,000 for the recharges for the regulatory service, which were paid pretty much straight away. So often some of the recharges for our service, some of the legal recharges are quite large invoices that go out to other boroughs that aren't always paid within the 30 days, so they'll sit there showing as a debt, maybe up to 3 months. So if we move on to number 3, adult social care debt. So when we reported at the end of September, the debt had reduced very slightly, 80,000 from the June figure, still at £4.3 million. Been quite a bit of progress on sundry debt. The financial assessments team under 3.6, 3.7 have been doing some more work on reassessing existing clients to make sure that we were still charging or not charging the correct amounts. And just under 3.9, just to give a flavour of the level of debt that we're invoicing for adult social care. So in September, we raised just under £600,000 worth of invoices for adult social care debt. A lot of them are on direct debits, and we've had a couple of recent promotions. But when I drafted this report in October, there was still £190,000 of that 600,000 outstanding. So trying to show the picture that each month, at least probably 170, 190,000 is unpaid and escalating each time. Now some of them are where perhaps we might have charges on properties and people are still being charged, so those debts are going to increase and keep increasing until we do something with the property or the client passes away and we get the money through rules and things like that. So the debt is a challenge, if you like, to keep the debt level because of the amount of debt that isn't paid each month. That makes sense. And under 3.10 just shows you in 18-19, £5.8 million of invoices were raised for adult social care debt, of which 1.33 was still outstanding at the end of the year. I think I've previously reported that we've had an initiative with specialist solicitors. That's ongoing still. We've now, since June, we've started to use our own legal service. So the end of September was a little bit soon to give an update on how our legal service is progressing, but for the next report that you'll get one. Just to sort of give an example of some of the cases that we have that perhaps haven't been paid yet. We're recently dealing with a solicitor who's dealing with a deceased husband and wife, who between them owed over £200,000 in debts to the council. So we're just waiting for the sale of the property, and hopefully, depending on how long that sale takes, there should be £200 of debt coming off of the portfolio, if you like. The next big debt is housing benefit overpayments. We continue to create a lot of overpayments through the different DWP initiatives on, particularly around real-time information. In the past, up until sort of probably 3 years ago, we were always reliant on the customer to tell us about their changes. We've now got real-time information coming to us from the DWP via HMRC on people's earnings and pensions, where they're changing and we're not made aware of them. I even saw an instance where somebody started working for Merton Council as a second job and never returned it to us, and they were getting housing benefits. So that's, again,
That's audacity. You might kind of tip your hat to that.
Yeah, I didn't, but I get where you're coming from. So, but that's the sort of example, a little bit extreme, but we see many instances where people don't tell us about increases in wages and things like that. One of the great initiatives that the DWP have introduced in the last couple of years enables us to now attach to a debtor's earnings. So in council tax, we've always been able to attach to earnings. If you owe us council tax and we've obtained a liability order, we can approach your employee and legally they have to give us a percentage of your earnings first off to the council. The DWP have now introduced that for housing benefit overpayments. And the percentage is something, depending, the sliding scale, again, I've seen payments per month, one person, over £800. And when you think that we're probably only getting 8 or 10% of their salary, people that are earning a lot of money now that have owed us housing benefit. So maybe when they were claiming housing benefit, they weren't working, owe us money, moved on, they're now working, earning very good money, and still not paying the debt to us. So we do try to catch up with some of these debtors. That's housing benefit overpayments, which isn't in the report, but you might find interesting, and if you don't, I'll shut up. With housing benefit, we administer it for the DWP. So we get back all the money that we pay out, 100% in grant. And we pay out, and the amount is diminishing because of universal credit, but I think our latest grant payment is something like £84 million that we get back. But when we create an overpayment that is the claimant's error, we get back 40% of that overpayment from the government in subsidy. If we then obviously collect that overpayment, that money that we're owed, we obviously get 100% of it. So you can, in some instances, or you do, get 40% from the government for the overpayment, and then if you collect it, you get the full debt as well. It's not an easy debt to collect, but there are ways that you can, if you're very good at it and if you exceed targets and things like that, you can get back more than 100% of the debt. Probably the closest we've got to selling debt, it was the initiative we've done on the housing benefit overpayments. This report says that within probably 4 months, 3 months, the company collected £60,000. I know the figure for this month, up to the end of December, 108,000. So already they've collected 108,000 of the debt that we've previously
And what are
written
they,
off.
and what they're getting?
50-50.
Yeah, am I allowed to say that? Okay. Yeah. No, I was quite confident telling you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But general debt, general non-payments are not covered in the same way as the 40% from central government. That's only for overpayments.
Housing benefit overpayments, yeah.
Yeah, that's not for like people
No.
not paying housing benefit back.
Yeah, that's a housing benefit overpayment, yeah. So when they...
That's all
overpayments.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a couple of little slight changes. So if it's recognised as our error, local authority error, they incentivise us to keep our errors low. This is another complete subject. Keep our error rate low, and if we do keep it below a certain percentage of the 84 million, we get all of it back. But we wouldn't recover local authority error overpayments from customers. So you tell us that you've started work, we don't do that change, and then 3 months later we make that change. Actually, say, sorry, there is an overpayment, but we wouldn't expect you to repay that because you probably weren't aware that you'd been overpaid. Because you told us in good faith and we'd failed to amend your claim.
You're nicer than HMRC then, aren't you?
Well, I'm trying not to be, but yeah. But you know.
But those are the rules.
Yeah, those are the rules. If we make an error and we don't think that you knew about that error, then we wouldn't reclaim it from you. If it's our error, if you don't tell us about it, then absolutely we try to recover it, and we will recover it.
The converse of what you've said is that where we make an overpayment due to their error,
Yep.
we don't get it back. It costs us 60%.
In fact,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's this thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But as I say, to be fair, they've improved they've given us better powers and better opportunities to try to collect that money. So the initiative that we started, that was debt that we'd written off. And then the company approached me, and had I thought about it, all they've done is they've sent a file of data to the DWP and asked for work details. You know, it's a lot of work that they're equipped to do, and if I tried to do it, I
Well,
wouldn't.
no, we said as proof of concept, did it work?
Yeah, and it did.
And you're now doing it though.
Oh, we do it on an ongoing basis, absolutely.
So, I think that's
Yeah,
a great way
we're
to
doing it on an ongoing basis, yeah, absolutely.
Look, can
Yeah,
you just
absolutely.
use the microphone, please, Aaron?
Sorry, I do apologise.
Sorry, I just want to check my understanding this right, because I think it's wrong. Is that you're going to this contractor, giving them, and it's 50-50 on returns of overpayment, yeah? You previously got 40% from the government anyway, so we're still losing 10% even on things that we're getting repaid back to us, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one more. Okay.
But we had already tried to collect that debt, had been unsuccessful, and had written it off.
Yeah, no, I get that, I get the rationale for you doing it.
Okay.
But as a proportion, sorry, the one final bit is you get a 40% for all of the overpayments.
Yeah.
That's only for stuff that you've previously written off. There's also another section which is stuff that you haven't written off that you're trying to work on, and there's a section for stuff that you have written off that they still haven't managed to reclaim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry if that got a little bit
No, that's good.
confusing. So that's housing benefit overpayments. I think just the last table that I wanted to maybe just highlight is under section 6, which perhaps gives the truest reflection year on year of the debt position. So it's broken down by the main debt types, and it shows you the debt position quarterly going back over just over a year. So for example, end of September compared to the end of September 18. So we're in the same position in the financial year. We've had the same opportunity to collect unpaid council tax from the previous year, things like that. So at September we were reporting an increase of, I think it was 2 points, write it down somewhere, whatever that is, 37.4 to 34.7, 2.7 million. But when you start to drill down, £2 million of that is just sundry debt under 30 days. So again, so I've reported within those figures all sundry debt. So we could have issued an invoice just a day earlier for £1 million on a recharge, and that would be included in there. But that, I think, gives a true reflection, or a truer reflection, on where we are with our overall debt for the main debt types year on year. Happy to take any.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions? Paul?
Just one thing I wasn't clear on the adult social care debt. Is some of that debt agreed debt, i.e. charge has been agreed on the house, or is it all stuff you're trying to claim back because it was meant to be paid at the time?
So probably a bit of both. So some of it will be debt that we do have a charge on the property, and if the debt is still in a home and they're still being billed, then that debt will be increasing, and there'll be a charge on that property that we've secured against the debt.
This would be under the old arrangement.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so as pre-2015 we were allowed to do that, but we don't charge interest.
And forgive me, what's the new arrangement?
The new arrangements, you charge interest from the day of the debt is accounted. But these are shown separately. They're not included here, but I think we only have about
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 of
Yes.
those.
Yeah. But newer ones, as Caroline says, newer ones are shown outside of the debt report, Caroline, in the
Because
accounts,
they're
aren't they?
shown separately.
Okay, well, that's going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question about my favourite subject, PCN?
Yes.
I mean, it seems to me that this highlights a public safety issue and outside of the debt aspect. Because we've got 4,000 odd PCNs unpaid, and I guess this is because those vehicles have no road tax, no MOT, and no insurance. Would that be correct?
No. So under that final table on the last page of the report, there's actually 26,000 unpaid PCNs. So the table there shows you the age of the outstanding PCN and the value of it. So there's actually 26,000 unpaid PCNs. The debt was £3.8 million. So those would be either offences through parking or through moving traffic, through the CCTV systems that have been implemented. That wouldn't include any vehicles that are on the highway that are causing, that are untaxed or un-MOT'd. That wouldn't be included in the PCN.
I think we're at slight cross
Oh, are we?
purposes.
Sorry.
What I'm trying to say is that because we've got some that are older than 15 months,
Yeah.
presumably you haven't been able to chase these people down, because when you went to the DVLA, they said no record of this vehicle, hence my no road
Fine.
tax,
Sorry.
no insurance.
Yeah, apologies. So we still may be trying to pursue them. What we find, once the debt is passed to my enforcement team, so the first part of collecting the debt for PCNs is through the parking section. Once they've issued all the notices, they'll try to obtain a warrant at the county court, which then gets passed to the enforcement team, bailiff team. We then have a year to collect that debt before the warrant expires. What we find a lot of is that vehicles that commit offences in Merton aren't necessarily, oh, that sounds a bit weird, aren't necessarily registered in Merton. Probably a third of them are registered outside of Merton. So part of that will include vehicles that are perhaps registered in Manchester, in Birmingham, all across the country, that we will try to pick up initially using CCTV camera vans, so AMPR vans, where my enforcement team will have, I think we have 5 of them, driving around. If you find a vehicle that's on our database that owes us money, it pings up, we'll try to take control of that vehicle. We try that for 3 months, and then if we're unsuccessful and that vehicle, the register keeper of that vehicle is outside of Merton and surrounding boroughs, we'll pass it to a nationwide bailiff company. So we do try to pursue them, so they're not necessarily untaxed MOT.
Peter?
Yes, with the the ones of AMPR. Has that improved the collection rate? And in fact, are people less likely to contest because there's photographic evidence of the offence?
Okay.
Because it's a decent improvement, isn't it? Of nearly 700,000 over the between the two periods.
So I think a couple of things. I think now that all PCNs are recorded and there's pictures that are sent to you if you've committed a PCN, I think certainly helps. And speaking from experience, I got one from Merton and I could see the events that I'd committed clearly on their website. So I think that absolutely helps parking. What my staff have are camera vans, so when they're driving round, so pretty much they're also parking have camera vans when they're driving round for moving traffic that commit offences, they'll issue the tickets. My staff, the camera vans, are purely once we've obtained a warrant and the debt is with us to collect. So we'll drive around and we might find a vehicle in the car park downstairs that somebody has got an outstanding PCN and has not paid. And if we find that vehicle, we will then try to take control of that vehicle to obtain payment for the council. So it's two slightly different things, Councillor. The initial PCN being committed and the evidence that's provided, and then us trying to collect it at the end of the process using CCTV or AMPR software in our vehicles.
So we have increased the number of vehicles, but there's a tipping point as to you don't want 50 vehicles out and about driving around. So it's just trying to make sure that the balance right.
Okay, can I just if I may, I think we'd all assumed in this sort of AI assisted world, if you've got the registration, you could just ding onto DVLA and
So
they could tell exactly who owned it. And
absolutely. So once a PCN is issued, I think parking then go to DVLA. They get the registered keeper's address and they write to them. Subsequently, once they issue a warrant and it's passed to us, we do exactly the same because that's often 3, 4, 5 months later. So as soon as a warrant's passed to us, we will check the DVLA for the current keeper's address. So we will either go to the current keeper's address, if it's in Merton surrounding area, knock on the door, try to collect. If, as I say, they don't, the registered keeper isn't local, we will try to pick it up on the camera vans. Because if they've been in Merton once or twice to commit crimes, crimes, that's the wrong word.
Like you criminal.
Yes, absolutely. I was talking about myself there. To commit an offence, then there's a chance that they're going to come back into the market.
But does not link. Doesn't that link to this point of? I don't understand the legality of it, but once this has been issued, it's not been picked up. DVLA knows who it is. They need road tax every year. They need MOT every year. Is there no sort of automatic stop that there's outstanding debts that's on that vehicle, and therefore the vehicle cannot be whatever insured?
yeah,
So
that just seems like an odd. And I know it's not a council level, but it seems like an odd thing that they haven't joined up at the national level.
So one thing I see, if I'm driving around the borough and I see a clamp on a vehicle, I try to look at it, see if it's one of ours. But you'll see a lot of DVLA clamps on them. So I think the DVLA, I don't think they engage private bailiff companies to try to go out and collect fines for them, or perhaps where there's no road tax or anything like them. So if you drive around and you see clamps on vehicles, ours don't have London Borough Merton on them, but you do see DVLA ones.
No, the point I'm making is that everyone needs to insure their car every year. Let's just use insurance. Every time that the insurers do it, you have to declare your points, but they can verify that with the DVLA. You've told the DVLA that there's a bunch of PSNs, and notices out, and the question therefore becomes is why is an individual allowed to insure a car with outstanding charges against them? Why isn't there legislation in place to prevent that?
So
I don't know, Paul. I see you have been.
The last thing you want to do as a government is stop people insuring their cars. You just compound problems.
Well, okay, and I did 70% on it. Whatever the case, why aren't these two parts linked in? Why aren't these two things linked in? That actually we're allowed in a bunch of cars with outstanding offence charges associated with them to carry on in a normal way with normal insurance, normal MOTs, normal licences, no extra points? That's the question.
I think we're straying from our area of
That's the point,
jurisdiction.
though, isn't it?
So, maybe you should write to him.
I think it just seems odd that they haven't sort of stitched this together.
I think you may well do that.
I'll text her now. What are you doing? Get Jess Phillips to campaign on this.
There is an element of when we try to get that information and go and issue a warrant, that then we are told, I have changed my vehicle, that vehicle's no longer mine.
Yeah.
And there is that is
Yeah.
sometimes used as a genuine excuse and sometimes it is not. So there is those aspects as well to pick up, so it's just.
I think the other thing we find is that lots of vehicles are on finance, and we can't do anything. We can't. We have no powers if it's on finance.
Are there any other questions relating to the set position? No, sir.
Well, there's two issues. One is terms of speeding, and now there are people being offered to go to a course on speed awareness thing, and but what's the ratio if they re-offend again?
So I think that speeding is a criminal offence, and that's not a local authority issue. So speeding is probably administered by the police or. So none of these are speeding. No, nothing to do with it.
Okay. The second issue is the misuse of blue badges, because I know there are a lot of people have been caught out and misusing it.
I don't think I'm going to be very helpful to you, and that shouldn't come as a shock. That certainly doesn't come within PCNs or anything like that. I think that's more of a fraud issue that the department might have some figures on, Caroline.
Yeah, so the South London Fraud Partnership will do some work for us on those, and sometimes we will do some blitzing in certainly our car parks in Wimbledon of people using the disabled spaces. So that's where we look at. Or if we see there's disabled spaces outside the back here, we have made sure that those, if there's staff parking there, that they have the right to park there. So we do check on those spaces at times.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, is it a quick one, Nigel? Or
Yes,
we move on?
a very quick one. I've been it's somewhere in this video report, and I've been trying to find the page. I noticed there are plans to reduce the bailies too. Why is that?
Plans to reuse the bailiff?
No,
Reduce.
to reduce.
Oh, reduce. Okay.
And where is that?
So,
read it in there the top
okay. Is that under our
page.
Is that under our budget report?
We should.
So, certainly I'm reporting a lower, a reduced level of income that we're collecting from the bailiff service, partly due to, and I don't know what we've written down, so partly due to some reduced staffing levels, and there has been a drop-off in the number of PCNs that have been passed through to us from parking. So if that's what you're referring to within the budget report on the bailiff side, no?
Forecasting an underspend.
Yeah. So an underspend is, yes, is fine. Is there anything about reduced staff? I mean, we have had reduced staff this year, but not because of different staffing issues, sickness and things like that. And as I say, the forecast, certainly for the end of December, which you've probably not seen yet, is a reduction in the level of income that we've collected, or we anticipate that we'll collect. But that's, yeah, thinking about it, that wouldn't be in this report yet, because I've only just done that.
Would this affect the future when you go and you know pick up the fine?
No, I don't think so. As I say, if we're talking about parking fines in Merton, there has been a slight reduction in probably the last 6 months, maybe even a bit longer. And I think that was always planned with or anticipated with the ANPR project. I think when it was implemented, they were anticipating this level of PCNs and then a reduction as motorists got used to the new zones and different things like that. So we've certainly seen that. But with regards to council tax, with regards to the work we do for some, if anything, there's a slight increase in the number of PCNs coming from some. But there is, as I say, although it won't be in this report yet, at the end of December, I am forecasting a lower level of income collected.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's very, very
Thank you.
interesting. And,
Last item next time?
as this so much interest, I think maybe we should have a more meeting.
Debt collection always gets.
Perhaps I can be excused.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Drive safely.
You criminal.
No, he didn't speak.
So I think we move on to item 5, the shared service report. This was referred to us by the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, who would value our thoughts on the report. Is it something you would like to say a few words of introduction on, Peter?
Yes, okay. The original review goes back a few years now. I'm sure Julia will be about to remind me.
2016.
2016, okay. Well, have we read it? There were some things that we put in place which may well have gone by the board of it in subsequent years. One of which was that we certainly asked that a report should come each year to the Commission from the Chief Executive when he came to, along with the leader, to give his update and review of our first meeting of the year on progress in both shared and outsourced services. And if I'm absolutely honest, I don't think we've helped into that in the last year or so. So that would be something, it was a recommendation, it was accepted, and it's something we should ensure happens. Otherwise, I am aware that we continue to look at opportunities for shared services. I don't know if you've been through this in detail, but one of the things that I note what the task group did is on page 27, also received written information on the outsourcing strategy and experience of a number of other councils, including Northamptonshire. And they had a terrific write-up of what they were doing, I remember at the time. And
Yeah, I do think there's a really pre sort of litter feel to your as well as previous. Like, yeah, everything's great when you outsource. let's just do this, and then suddenly.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, that was certainly instructive. I think when we did, for example, talk in some detail to Richmond about their shared service with Kingston, their Achievement for Children partnership, and that's had some quite rocky experiences since, actually. So these things don't always work out, and it is of value to keep your eye on the field there and to see what's playing well and what not so well. And I think also we looked at Barnet and the one council approach. I think capital are in there everywhere, and I think it was intuitively we knew when we went there that that was not for us. We wanted a model where we would keep far more in control of the elements, and not just hand over on that scale as Barnet had done. Those are quick reflections, Chair, but we should be looking at where we are, and I think we also need to be asking about possibilities that we're looking at right now for future shared services.
Can I just add something on
Yes,
that?
Julia.
Just to remind you that the reason why the Commission has asked this group to look at this is because one of the topic suggestions was that we do some more scrutiny of shared and outsourced services, and the Commission thought that it would be better if this group looked first at what had been done previously, so you could take a view on whether there is a need for further scrutiny. And I think also being mindful of the work that's going on at the moment by the commercialisation task group, and just to make sure that we're not duplicating that.
Oh,
Thank you. So I thought this was an excellent report, I've got to be honest, and I'm not just saying it because you, Peter, but I didn't, and I was surprised it existed, right? Because when I read the recommendations, I thought, yeah, that's really what we need. Yeah, that's really what we need. Yeah, that's really what we need. And no word of a lie, I then looked and went, it's 2016, right? Why haven't we been doing that for 3.5 years, or whatever the case may be? And I thought, so the application of this is much. The other thing that I felt that, when I looked into Appendix B to it, which Julia sent me, was the fact that I felt that this also, these principles, the guiding principles for shared outsourcing service arrangements, were not mindful of either the wealth of literature that's now out there from the Barcelona Principles Institute of Government, from APSI, as to some of the criteria that one should consider when outsourcing or partnering, nor was it mindful of our personal, Merton's personal, organisational learning lessons from when we've looked at the services that we've outsourced. Because we've talked about contract monitoring, we've talked about allocation of risk and where the risk is is owned between the people in the partners. And yet, Appendix B to this, which is really the nuts and bolts of this, because this says you've got to go through this sort of criteria list, doesn't pay any attention to any of those things, that whole wealth of literature that exists, or our own things that we have identified over the last 2 years. And therefore, for all the good recommendations that are in this, it's become kind of rather meaningless, because we're not doing what it says, and the principles that underpin it haven't been improved to learn from all the catastrophes that have happened outside of this borough and the one or two issues that we've had within it. And I think that'd be my takeaway, is that, when was the last time this, because, this document is pivotal to the recommendations, yet we didn't even, I spoke to Julia, we didn't include it in the pack. So when was the last time this was reviewed? Because in this, genuinely, right, as the final, it goes to purpose, content and process, genuinely, the only mention, it says, does your modelling cover all possible economic considerations? It gives you no inclination as to what those considerations are. It doesn't give any criteria, it doesn't talk about the risk, it just leaves it open. So you're wondering, well, what are the principles to which we should be adhering to? So the report's good, but our failure to apply it or update it and to review the principles that ultimately supplement it, I think is problematic for us.
Caroline, do you want to comment on what Diane just said?
So I would say then, as part of when we were reviewing our target operating models, we sort of moved it on slightly to make a by review of our services. And therefore, should we continue to provide them in-house? If we don't continue to provide them in-house, how do we then buy them in? Do we buy them through a shared service? Do we buy them through outsourcing? do we get a partner? Is it another local authority arrangement which isn't a share? So I think we've morphed on,
So
but
you
not
think this has
necessarily.
been superseded?
I think that's been superseded. So what we will look to do is share that template that we've done for a make or buy review, so you can see how we've moved it on.
I think, and also I think, sorry, also if that's going to happen, I think the recommendations that I think are largely extant, even if some of the terminology is used because it's been superseded, need to be updated, because it is, you know, the founding report is a good one, the recommendations are sound, but if we've changed the way that we do this with the make or buy model and any of the target operating models, it'd be nice to have a revised paper with just the recommendations, not the full report, adapted to update to what we the processes we currently use, and also then to look at the principles that have replaced this, would be my takeaway to it.
Yeah. Cool.
And the lessons learned from our recent outsourcing. I'm not confident we get the lessons. I get response from Toby saying, I can't control this, I'd like to control it, it's not within the contract. So I want to make sure we've learned the lessons from Veolia as well. We've got to revise the whole thing. Let's look at this, what we didn't do, let's practice out there, then and now, and lessons we've learned from how we need to improve things.
But that's not a shared service? Well, I suppose everybody's made it's a contract.
This is
See,
the problem is, Caroline, is that the one thing early on in that report, it wasn't clear about the idea of shared. And then when one looks at the business case development principles, it explicitly says developing a business case for shared or outsourced service arrangements. So I think really that, Chair, there are two options here. One is that we either get updated on what you just said has superseded this, we look to combine it with existing recommendations, or there's the more advanced time-consuming option, which I'm not against in any way, which is Paul's as well, which is where we look at we look at both those things, but also then look at the lessons identified from our last couple of years, but also look to bring in external lessons through APSI, through Institute of Government, who have all written extensively about some of the criteria that one needs to consider when, as you put in, make or buy, but as most people say, the big insourcing, outsourcing argument that's going on nationally at the moment, because we're not the only ones toiling with this.
Yeah.
Loads of us are going, okay, we've got this one.
Yes, I must admit, I think that we are perhaps in need of an update of our approach to this, and I think that what Owen suggests, actually both proposals or recommendations have merit. I can see that this could be quite a lot of work. We may need to allow time for this to be done.
But I suppose I'm not sure where the lessons learned from the South London Waste Partnership goes, if it goes to sustainable communities or comes here. And also, are they at the right point of doing those lessons? So I suppose there's a timing point there as well.
Okay, well let's come back to the process. Owen, do you want to say something?
May I suggest that we propose it with the utmost emphasis as to the Overview and Scrutiny Commission to do a task group at the beginning of the next financial year, and it becomes one of the areas that we give strong concern, sort of strong recommendation to, because obviously all the task groups are done and should, despite the general election, should be looking to finish in this financial year. But in 5 months' time, we're going to be looking at new task and finish groups. I think there's a real cross-party feeling that this is an area that needs to be reviewed and revised, both with regards to personal experience and external lessons, and update this. So perhaps we could do it in that way, Chair. I'm looking at that, Chair, rather than that, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Peter, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, it's I mean, it's a question of how much resource we put behind it, isn't it? As you were mentioning, various bodies, APSI, is it?
So there's the Institute of Government have written about it, APSI have written about it, and then there's the Barcelona Principles from Northern Spain's experience, and there's a couple of others, but they're the big three ones.
Yeah. I mean, it's further on. We've got data on our on staffing, haven't we? And if I can just, one of the things I noticed going through that is we are short-staffed in the departments where people write or focus on policy. So in other words, I'm not sure we've actually got the people in place to do that work, but I guess that shouldn't necessarily be a...
But we're looking to, the point is we're looking to do it next year as one of the allocated resources for task and finishes groups, because we have one under, we have two for Overview and Scrutiny Commission, don't we? We have M&F financial plus one another, is that correct? Julia?
You won't have next year because you'll have reduced staffing because my post is being deleted. That was agreed.
So,
that's already been agreed.
So you're saying that next year Overview and Scrutiny Commission will have no capacity to do any task and finish?
No, it will have the choice to do one, which could either be a financial monitoring task group carrying on, or a more classic task and finish group. That will be a choice for the incoming commission as to how it wants to use its officer resources. I mean, I won't be here, so you know, Caroline might advise differently, but that, you know, you can't do more work than you've got officers.
No, I get that.
support.
I get that. I didn't realise that we were losing the one task and finish group next year.
Caroline, do you have any observations on this, the sources and how we might resource a task group looking at?
If you go up the financial monitoring task group then.
Right, so Turkey's voting for Christmas.
It's crazy.
Well, is it, you could call in the decision, can't you? To scrap that post, or to not resource that sufficiently.
Yes, that makes sense.
I mean, the other, I mean, obviously this is for, you know, for the future and particularly for the topic workshops. You could play around a bit with what goes to the commission, and perhaps you could put the quarterly monitoring reports back into the commission. That would free up some more task group time, or you could decide to have fewer commission meetings and use more of the resources for task group, or you could do bits of more targeted work within commission meetings. You know, you've got a resource that you can prioritise how you use it, but it will need quite a lot of careful thought. You know, and is this, to what extent is this a priority? To what extent are you going to be able to add something that the council's not already doing?
Well,
that's a challenge.
Given by the fact that we've just identified that the key appendix for the 2016 strategy is out of date and everything written in it is out of date and been superseded, I would suggest that actually pulling that together, that there does seem to be a small hole in how this has been approached. It isn't as if we wanted to do this on the back of it, it appearing perfect. You know, maybe I don't know.
Peter?
My instinct is that I would like this to stay with this group, because my feeling is that the people who are most interested in this are here, and that we will get most out of it from a pretty focused approach first on updating where we need to be and understanding what's gone on. I just feel that we are effective and informal here, and if we take it to the commission,
Point made, yeah.
will become it will become
political,
more lengthy. That's just, you might say, rather subjective feel, but we can get a lot out of it looking at it here, I think.
Paul?
I agree with that entirely. Karen, how about putting back to you that you come back to report to us on where we are, because this is not where we are, things have moved on, lessons are always being learned, things are being tweaked. Why not come back to us with what you think the position is now, and whether there are things that need to be added to that? Maybe you're right, it's all perfect now, but is that the way forward?
Yeah, okay, we can do that.
So I think that we have decided that Caroline will report back to us with an update on where we are now in relation to these recommendations and why a make and buy approach supersedes that which we
I think
have.
it's make or buy, isn't it?
So make or
We should
buy.
end up.
We definitely got rules made and by.
Supersedes what we've already documented.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summation of what we're asking Caroline to do?
Yeah.
And when might we be able to do this by, Caroline?
Well, that's what I was just looking to see what the
I
next
wonder.
one was, which I think is the 7th,
5th of March.
5th of March. So
Yeah.
definitely not for the next one, because that's the day after the budget. So the one, if there's one after that.
So if the financial monitoring task group is still in existence next year, it'll be to an early meeting of July.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think we should now move on to agenda item 6, the monitoring report for the first half of the year. Caroline, would you like to introduce that?
Yes, thank you. So as at end of September 42, we were nearly 1.5 million underspent as part of that gross budget. However, on page 66 you will see there are some variances across the departments, with 3 departments underspending, 2 overspending. Public health we are expecting to come in on budget, so 12k overspent at the moment, but clearly children's schools and families and at that moment in time 1.6 million overspend. There are some corporate items where there are underspends to offset that, so you can see overall it is a healthy position. Clearly there's detail of the departments further for that, and in a lot of corporate items you can see impact of capital revenue budget and following from discussion and training we had earlier, the investment income, pension fund, price inflation, just some areas there around what we are doing. Within this we have also reported an increase in the overspend on the dedicated school grant. So this was reporting an overspend of 9.9 million. That has subsequently gone up further and been reflected therefore in the budget reports that we have brought and will be bringing to Cabinet at the end of this month to see how we're doing with that overall deficit. Capital programme, there were a number of requirements that Cabinet had subsequently approved, and detail on the spend of that, and again linked with what is happening, refresh and review of the capital programme, new schemes, requirements and slippage into future years. There's clearly been progress on our savings, which we have sort of summarised on page 89, and then the details against those, and I've also shown the shortfall in 2021. There will be some deferrals or some what we call swaps of savings in the future programme to come back to Cabinet in January, and some of those will pick up some of the savings that may be reflected here. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, we did not do some further budget information on our staffing element, so at this moment in time it's the pure, what we call establishment control, looking at our budgeted numbers of staff, the vacancies, and where those vacancies are covered by agencies and therefore unfilled vacancies, majority of which can be held to either offset overspends or are held maybe an early vacancy to release savings in future years. So happy to take questions.
Thank you. Nigel.
Right, and I've got 2 questions. The first one is under public space on page 71. Why is there an under spend because if you look around the boy, it's a mess, you know, with street cleaning, litter, and etc. Is there any chance with the council ever consider putting in more, you know, cash in to tidy up the borough?
So we have two major contracts. One is our
Yeah.
disposal of waste,
Yeah,
and one is the collection of waste.
yeah,
So you're referring to the collection of waste.
yeah,
We are having now a major underspend on our
Yeah.
disposal costs of waste due to less waste going to landfill.
yeah. No, I know this, but I used to you know, because there's more needs to be done, you know.
So that's being picked up through the Sustainable Communities panel and also through discussions with the Waste Partnership.
Yeah,
And there'll be a report coming to Cabinet as to the outcome of the annual review
Yeah.
and to scrutiny next
Yeah.
month.
yeah. All right then. And under your save on 89, page 89. Are you able to confirm there's no savings have been missed in the previous year? Have been if you find the saving and then at a later date it was change your mind with the target met or saving.
So savings targets are rolled forward.
Yes.
So if
Yes, I know this, but if you spot, we can make a saving there or there or and then you will be reported, and then at a later date you're not able meet the target.
So as I've said, people can swap the
Yeah.
saving.
Yeah.
So that's what they do, and I think some of the savings that are reported in the schedule have indeed been replaced. I'm just trying to think some of the E&R ones in particular.
Some of the 17-18 E&R ones are coming back to Cabinet as replacements this month.
Yeah.
So we will not stop monitoring on them until they
Yeah.
either achieve them or then say, no, we
Yeah.
will come forward. and
How
say
often is it?
how long? Well,
How often is it? Is it many or is it quite a few?
no, there's not many because there's very few now that are not
Okay.
deliverable. So
Okay.
we keep an eye on them
Well,
and make
okay.
sure. So the details
Okay.
in the appendices
Okay.
of what they're doing and how they're able to meet them this year or
Me
future
them,
years.
and they always are reported, yeah,
Yes,
always are.
yes.
Okay, just wanted your shirt. Thank you.
Anyone else? Peter?
I suppose the overall impression really is the, I call it catastrophic. I mean, the problems in children's services are very alarming, really, aren't they? The overspend on transport and so on, and it's, I know we're putting in significant growth, aren't we? But there is a feeling that some of them are difficult to control and almost open-ended, actually. Can we have any reassurance that they will be brought under control, you know? How's the planning going to address the concerns?
So within the Cabinet report that will be coming at the end of the month, there will be, as flagged within the October Cabinet report, the NTFS, there will be a growth rate for children's schools and academies. And there will be close monitoring of that, because clearly we've not had significant growth for a number of years, and any growth that goes in has to be funded from something. So therefore we want to make sure that it is the right level of growth, it is then achieving what they need to achieve, and then they are able to deliver what they have said they will do with those money and resources.
Can I? Yeah. If I collect my thoughts, I think my concern is about the number of variables that are beyond our control that seem to be pushing the spending, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, costs of taxi services for where you begin to get the feeling that the demand is far outstripping supply, and we're having to pay more and more for that. Am I right that it is in fact very hard to see how we bring an end to it, and even if we put in a significant growth, and the other point of course is resolution of the situation with the overspend on the schools grant, whether there's any progress in negotiations with the government, because that's a national issue.
So certainly with regards to transport in the first instance, there's a review with Hannah, Rachel and Chris, so the three directors who use our transport services, to take a view long term as to what type of transport is needed. We've declared climate change emergency, so what does that mean for the type of vehicles we now need, the provision that's required. Not all of our provision required is statutory. So do we look at that level? Do we look at the level of service that's being provided? And so I don't think we can say there are elements we cannot look at and do something about at this stage. With regards to the dedicated schools grant, we are awaiting the outcome of consultation from the DfE as to whether we are allowed to have deficit, whether we are able to fund it from the general fund. Until we've got that outcome, it's mixed, and therefore we are providing monies to offset the deficit. We are not putting money into the dedicated schools grant, because as soon as you put that money in, you'll never get it back. We are awaiting, we have submitted a recovery plan, we are waiting on feedback and the DfE to see how that progresses further, and what happens there. And unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, so there's been a commitment to expand the numbers of children we will look after. There has been an increase in the level of grant, so if the government was able to fund the cost of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, then that wouldn't be an issue for us, but it's then making sure that we get sufficient resources, and also look at the type of accommodation that they're in, and responsibilities once they turn 18 and they're along with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Then a looked after child we still have responsibilities for, so we need to ensure that they get settled status, that those aspects are looked after, and how we manage to mitigate that ongoing impact. So I think there's certainly still things that can be done to manage the resources.
If we used the 1819 and 1920 financial years for a indication, and this is what building on what Peter said, an indication of send costs, and average those two and push them forward for the next 4 years, right? Would our budget be balanced? As in, your forecasted spend for children's services, if that was based on just on the average of this financial year and the last financial year, to push forward for the next 4 years, would the MPFS be would it be balanced like you're statutorily obliged to do or legally obliged to do?
I would say based on the average of 1890, probably yes, but it's not that average. It's an increase.
Well, look, I get that.
Yeah. But,
I do get.
But then there's the issue of SEND sits in the general fund and sits in the dedicated schools grant. So again, what elements are we saying we look at, and elements of how we can tackle a dedicated schools grant is expansion of our schools, so therefore that cost is picked up in the general fund. So it can get quite complicated as to how you balance it and what you do, and where the statutory responsibility of meeting those deficits then fall. So that's the challenge we've got at the moment. It's not clear, so certainly external auditors are of the view there should be some provision for it. DfE are trying to clarify that, but it's still not clear at this stage, and therefore we're waiting on that still to come through.
Okay, thank you. One more question. Sorry, that was me. I held
Sorry,
it.
it's me last.
I held it and then totally let it go. I forgot that my purpose was to make it quiet, and then I let it go with the foot to go.
Any other questions or comments from colleagues? I would just like to ask a question or two about the headcount paper. I'm on page 138. I think I may have asked this question before, so apologies. But I'm just finding myself confused by the budget numbers and the Trent establishment numbers. Because it seems to me that each quarter we say that the number of employees is below the budget, kind of understand that. Why is the Trent establishment figures always higher than the budget?
Whoa, mate, that is gold star stuff.
Can I ask you some of it? So, for some of the reason, not all of it will be. So, the budgeted figures are basically done by finance, based on the budgeted establishment. So, what should Merton look like, and it's an annual budget. On iTrent, you have to have every single post. So if there's project money, so we have transformation spend like MIB, so we have a MIB board. If there's money approved from there, and those posts are created on iTrent, they will show as over budget. And if somebody goes on maternity leave or sick leave and somebody new comes in, they will show as 2 people. So there are lots of reasons like that. I can't reconcile the bottom line, but there are genuine reasons for iTrent to be higher than the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Your iTrent FTE establishment is the same as the FTE employees and the vacancies added together.
So that's all iTrent data.
Yeah.
But
the
compared
budget-
to the budget is set is the March budget.
And if they're, so certainly within E&R, where we had the regulatory shared partnership come in, so the original budget and then the staff transferred, so therefore there was a difference there between what the iTrent establishment showed that point in time compared to the original. But in the majority of instances, it should be budgeted number and then we've got savings, so there should be those changes. But some of the reasons that Billy said, and this is also something that we're trying to get people, managers to look at more, to make sure that we understand those differences more clearly, and therefore we can then reduce some of the controls that we've put in place. That's ideally the position we want to be in.
And are you still hoping to produce the monetary amounts that go with these headcount numbers?
Certainly we should be able to produce information to assist you with some of this, and we'll start that process and then see what additional information you may need as a result. But certainly the overall salary estimates, I'm just trying to think, certainly within what we produce, within the budget book, we do have what the salary costs are, but they will include some redundancy in the pension fund and other bits.
Yeah.
So there is other costs included within those salaries, but we'll look to do a high level breakdown for you.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Looking at some of the detail of the overspend, is often referencing agency staff. Are we monitoring our use of agency staff? Is there somewhere where is it going up, is it going down? What are we doing as a council?
So I would say numbers of agency staff in total are coming down, but costs are going up. So certainly within the legal partnership, there are a high number of agency staff, and they are high cost agency staff. Standards and GP committee receive a regular quarterly update on agency staff over £30 an hour across each department, so that analysis is there. We regularly review, so each agency member of staff, there is a form process to go through. If they're extended, then that has to be signed off, and that's part of what I was saying, that we want to get to a position where there's less people involved in that sign-off, because it can be quite a torturous process, but to make sure that we're comfortable with all the information and the sources, then there are some more controls in place. But there are some areas, and that's why we've also started to look at then some of the apprenticeship training that we want to do to see can we grow our own. So I think there are sort of 5 legal apprenticeships. We've taken on 4 accountancy apprenticeships, 3 doing Civic and 1 doing SEMA. So again, trying to encourage people coming in at low levels of the organisation, as well as training of existing staff as well, to get high qualifications.
Nigel.
So to would I this for you could give us an update with the IT department, the IT department, because do you remember in the previous meeting or two that there was a lot of talk about it was spent over budget, and you were hiring external, people. But what happened since then?
So within our IT department, what we have our establishment as in the base level of number of staff. If there are then projects to be done and new IT systems to be implemented, then we will bring additional resources in. However, we've struggled to get those additional resources in. We've tried, and I think that was part of the customer contact programme when we looked at, where we tried fixed term contracts, we tried agency, we tried permanent, even though there wasn't necessarily a permanent role, which is not something I normally like doing, but it was just to try and encourage people to come in. So when we take the cost of a project for sign-off now, it will include mainly agency costs, project costs to deliver those projects, and as we go forward, so we're in the process of, we've rolled out Skype, we're looking to do Office 365, so we're working with BT to help us implement that. We've got, looking to award a GIS contract, so a Geographic Information System. There have been resources attached to that to help with the rollout and updating of various systems. So that's the way that we're looking to do that. And as part of the internal review, we are then looking to see, do we have enough capacity generally within our IT departments to assist us with, but that's an area.
Close the meeting at 9. So any pressing questions which colleagues might ask? Just one, Nigel.
Separate question. I noticed that you would you like say further comments on the London Council grants, the London Council grants.
So there is a London-wide council grants scheme, which all boroughs have to get approval for. So there are grants which are done at an overall London level, and then some are done on an area level.
Yeah.
Because obviously we had the general election, cabinet meeting was delayed by 2 weeks. So that approval would normally have gone to cabinet for sign off.
Yeah.
But if we don't go and get approval for the scheme, then it goes to default. So we've got to make sure that we are comfortable with the process. We are comfortable with the process, comfortable with the way the grant's been allocated. So it's just our contribution towards that then. So that's what, excuse me, I have got delegated authority to sign up to that, and I'm certainly recommending that we sign up to the London Borough Grant, London Council's London-wide grant scheme. And there's detail of who is getting awarded what grants. London councils manage all that process. So similar to the strategic grant programme we went through, they manage all that, monitor that on our behalf. We contribute money, but all boroughs will sign up to that, and it's just a timing issue this time round that's caused a slight hiccup in who actually authorises that.
Right. Thank you.
Well, I would just like to finish by thanking officers for their reports this evening, and also for making the time available to come to this rescheduled meetings.
And the Treasury brief beforehand. Thank you.
Yes, and indeed the Treasury meeting brief beforehand. So I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.